I want to do a quick recap because I don't want us to lose track of the bigger picture of the narrative. If you're joining us for the first time, or you're kind of jumping in kind of the middle of our time together, we're going through Exodus together, and it's been really, really an epic narrative. You're probably familiar with Exodus. You may not know all the ins and outs, but you're probably familiar with the Prince of Egypt. If you remember here and you've been coming out, then you're tracking along with us, then great. But I don't want us to lose the big idea, and so I want to recap. And the reason I want to recap is because, believe it or not, Exodus is not about Moses. Moses is definitely in the text, and he keeps coming up, and so I'm not saying he's not part of it, but if I could say this in a very, very pastoral, very spiritual way, Moses is a vessel of God. I mean, that'll preach. That's probably like a song waiting to be written, right? But Moses is a vessel of God. God is the cosmic and sovereign initiator, called Moses out of grace to change the course of history, especially for his people. This is God's story, church. Livestream, I don't want you to lose track of the bigger narrative, of the sweeping picture of Exodus, that this is about God. How is this about God? We go back to the beginning of Exodus. Pharaoh has been enslaving the Hebrews. You know this. He orders that all male babies be thrown into the Nile River as a way of controlling their population. Not a very nice guy, to say the least. Moses' mother sends him down the Nile. He's rescued by Pharaoh's daughter, and his life is spared. What does this tell us about God? God is sovereign. God is sovereign. He is steering these events to raise Moses to be this very unqualified but qualified leader. God is sovereign. We may think that God is only implicitly in the picture, but he is very, very explicitly in the picture. And hopefully that speaks to you that God is explicitly in your picture as well. Years go by, and one day Moses sees an Egyptian. He's just working, a Hebrew, enslaving him. Moses gets mad, decides to take circumstances under his own control, and he goes out and he murders him. I don't mean murder like, oh, y'all killed it, right? I don't mean murder like social murder on Facebook, but he murders him physically and doesn't want to get caught, so he runs away. And he finds a priest, finds his family, marries his daughter, starts to settle down. God calls him from the burning bush and tells him to go to the most powerful man on the planet, back to where you started, Pharaoh, and confront him. What does this tell us about God? I hope you kind of sense the pattern that I'm throwing at you. What does this tell us about God? God calls us out of grace. You think that these things are happening at a mere coincidence? God calls Moses out of grace. Why? Because he's accomplished what? Nothing. He's a murderer. Moses responds to God, and then he goes. And then Pharaoh asks a profound question to Moses, and it's the question that we still ask today: who is the Lord that I should obey his voice? And the reason that's such an important question is because how does God answer Pharaoh? It's not just 10 plagues, but the 10 plagues are a response to this question that we still ask today. You think those 10 plagues are random sets of things that God does because God is just random? God is not random. Every single one of those plagues, he's attacking a polytheistic false god. He's going to the heart of Egyptian culture, the heart of Pharaoh's philosophy and religion and worldview, and he's saying, I am the true Yahweh God. What does it say about God? God is the true Yahweh God. God is a true Yahweh God, not just here, but even in your life. And we may not sense physical, literal plagues now, but is God throwing plagues in your life to get you to see, am I your true Yahweh God? God then delivers people through the Red Sea, leads them into the wilderness, provides manna for their survival, right? Nutshell in a nutshell is what I'm doing. What does this tell us about God? God faithfully provides for his people. They're in the wilderness. God gives his law. It's like his constitution for his people. And despite what we think, they are not conditions for salvation. That's what was our talk last week. Not conditions for salvation, but descriptions of a free people. Not conditions, but descriptions. And we're not really going to go through chapters 21 to 24, but quickly, nutshell in a nutshell, is to help you understand. 21 to 24 is expositing the 10 Commandments. You want to read that through on your own. I encourage you to do so. You're going to read laws about sorcerers, laws about goats. Very applicable stuff for us today, right? That was a joke. Calm down, right? But that's a description, that's kind of an exposition of the Ten Commandments, right? If you're a sorcerer and you own goats and I don't know about it, I apologize. Okay, applies to you. But really, right? Those are the kinds of laws that we see. Now, what does this tell us about God when we look at His law? God is not just serious about holiness. He is serious about holiness, and He's serious about His people's pursuit of holiness. But God is also heavily concerned about our self-awareness, our identity. Are we living as slaves, or are we living as free people? And I need you to hear that. And I want you to resist the temptation to think that identity is just a one-sermon thing and we're done. Identity is a constant fight. It's God's constant pursuit of us and helping to us understand that we've been freed from Egypt and we're free. That's who we are, and that's what God is pressing in us in Exodus. I need to calm down. I'm just getting started. Okay, so we get to this part about the tabernacle, and we're going to be asking the same question. What does this tell us about God? What does this tell us about God? We're going to read through some of the text, and I'm going to be honest with you right now. This is still technically a narrative, but the tone and the pace changes a lot. Okay? This is kind of the part where the Red Sea is over, the wilderness is over, the 10 plagues are over. Now we're getting to the part where now there's really, really technical descriptions, instructions, in fact. And God is being really specific about some stuff. And you're going to hear language about the Ark of the Covenant. You're going to hear stuff about the tabernacle. Okay? If you understand holistically Exodus, this will be easier for you. If you don't, please do your best to try to get the big picture. But the tone changes a lot. I'm just telling you right now. But that doesn't mean it doesn't tell us who God is. And so if you just want to look at your text, we're going to be flipping through some things. I'm going to do my best to get you the big picture of the text. I'm going to quickly go through some technical portions of the tabernacle. I'm not going to read all of the next 6 chapters. Yes, I said that right, 6 chapters. But what I want us to read about right now is the Ark of the Covenant. And if you have no idea what the Ark of the Covenant is, that's okay. Just get this through your head. It's a big, holy chest, okay? Like a chest that you put stuff in, right? But this one's a really holy chest because you don't just put grandma's old socks in there. These are the 2 tablets of stone that contains the 10 commandments. That's what we're reading here. And God is instructing Moses on how to build this Ark of the Covenant. Go to verse 10, chapter 25, verse 10. They shall make an ark of acacia wood. 2 cubits and a half shall be its length, a cubit and a half of its breadth, and a cubit and a half its height. You shall overlay it with pure gold, inside and outside shall you overlay it, and you shall make on it a molding of gold around it. You shall cast 4 rings of gold for it, and put them on its 4 feet, 2 rings on the one side of it, and 2 rings on the other side of it. You shall make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold, and you shall put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry the ark by them. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark, they shall not be taken from it, and you shall put into the ark of the testimony that I shall give you. You shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half shall be its length, and a cubit and a half its breadth. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold. Of hammered work shall you make them on the 2 ends of the mercy seat. Make 1 cherub on the one end and 1 cherub on the other end. Of one piece with the mercy seat shall you make the cherubim on its 2 ends. The cherubim shall spread out their wings above, overshadowing the mercy seat with their wings, their faces one to another. Toward the mercy seat shall the faces of the cherubim be. And you shall put the mercy seat on the top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony that I shall give you. There I will meet with you, and from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim that are on the ark of the testimony, I will speak with you about all that I will give you in commandment for the people of Israel. Stop there. I dare you to do your QT on that this week, right? Is this even the Bible? Weird stuff, right? You might have this mental image of the ark in your head. Okay, that might be true. But you're probably wondering, what is all this for? What is the ark for? And like I said, this is the Ark of the Covenant. The covenant is the biblical word for the Ten Commandments. Ten Commandments is just some modern kind of Christianese, kind of convenient way of describing God's law. The covenant is a relationship. God didn't use the internet, and he didn't use paper and ink. They didn't have the Bible at their fingertips like we do. God calls Moses, and he tells him basically to chisel out these laws onto 2 stone tablets. Very old school, very hipster, right? And so, you're not going to laugh, really? Okay, so these two stone tablets are now in the Ark of the Covenant, and God is describing to them how to build this Ark of the Covenant. Notice, God doesn't say, build an ark. He uses this ancient language of measurements, and he uses cubits. How long is a cubit? We don't really know for sure, but if you want to know kind of what we think, it's where your elbow starts. It's where your elbow starts to the end of your fingertips. It's about 17 to 18 inches. That's about a cubit. So if you want to put those dimensions in your head, go ahead and do so. And what's going to happen is that Ark of the Covenant, they don't just kind of carry it around like it's a North Face backpack or something like that, but they're going to put it into a place called the Holy of Holies. I didn't make that up. The Holy of Holies, that sounds really holy because it's holy. Okay? And the Holy of Holies was placed in the place called the Holy of Holies. I made that one up, okay? But the Holy of Holies is in this private room separated by the rest of the holy place, and it was this big, thick curtain. And we can read about it, but I just want to explain to you, okay? This place called the Holy of Holies was a place where no one was allowed in. The Ark of the Covenant would be there because that was God's dwelling place, and you couldn't square up with God and expect to live. And so once a year, in Jewish they call it Yom Kippur, in English it's the Day of Atonement. Once a year, the high priest, one man chosen to do the job, would enter into the Holy of Holies with a bell just in case something went wrong, and he would make an offering for the sins of the people. And can you imagine the high priest, a human being, a man, going into the place where God dwells and offering and giving an offering to God on the sins of the people? I just don't want to die today. And it goes in and it gets the job done. And maybe he'll come out, maybe he won't. You see, that's how holy we're talking about. That is the Ark of the Covenant. Go to chapter 26. Hang with me, there's a point to all of this. I'm not going to read all the verses, but I want you to follow along and just see, because I'll summarize for you how this breaks down in chapter 26. In verses 1 to 6, we see that the set of curtains that I was talking about is going to be constructed with heavy-duty stuff, and it's supposed to be made like with really, really expensive stuff. You couldn't get it on Amazon Prime. You had to go travel and go hunt for it. God is not giving them really convenient fabrics and materials to work with. When he says, use these materials, they got to go and get it done. Hop on their camel, hop on their horse, whatever it is, their donkey, and go and hunt for this stuff and bring it so they can build the ark. 5 sets of 2 curtains were going to be joined to make it into one huge curtain. 60 feet wide, 42 feet high, top to bottom. This was to be the curtain inside the tabernacle. This is what separated God from man. Verses 7 to 14, there's going to be a second layer to the tabernacle. On the outer layer was a second layer of curtains over the inner layer, and it was made of goat skin. Why do they have a second layer? Because the first layer was really, really expensive. They wanted to protect it. Verses 15 to 25, these 2 curtains were held in place by 2 frames, and each of these pieces of the frame were placed on silver bases. The pillars or supports about 15 feet tall and were made of acacia wood. And apparently acacia wood is really expensive. If you want to get acacia wood today, you got to go to Australia or Hawaii. That's where it's natural, I guess, but really dense, really quality wood. Okay? I'm guessing that if you were raised in a Korean home, for some reason it's a Korean family, but you have Italian furniture. I don't know why it works like that, but I'm guessing maybe that kind of wood is made by acacia wood. I'm just babbling, whatever. So verses 26 to 30, the text shows that there were crossbeams connected to all the frames. The advantage of this big tent was that it was portable. Notice they are still in the wilderness. This is a huge camping project. They're not stationed. They're not building the temple just yet. Big tent. That's the tabernacle, folks. That's the biblical word for a big tent. Permanent, but not permanent. One day, God might say, hey, we're packing up, we're moving. And they would pack up everything, including the Ark of the Covenant. They would pack and they would move. And they would go to a different place in the wilderness. They're not permanent. And so it's a big tent and they're mobile. And verses 31 and 37, we see the layout of the tabernacle, which basically shows the entire shape being a rectangular shape. Did you get all that? I didn't even get all that. I need my notes for that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you a picture. Here's a picture of what we're looking at and what we just read. Can we get that up there? It's kind of small, but do your best to see it. And so the outer perimeter is the tabernacle, basically, the huge mobile tent. I just said it was rectangular. And then that smaller rectangle is basically what houses the Holy of Holies. On your far left, you might see in tiny writing the Holy of Holies, and there's this kind of weird-looking H. That is the Ark of the Covenant, and the little squiggly line is the curtain. That's where things went down. Okay? That's where the high priest would walk into the presence of God, hoping to come out alive, and he would present the offering for the sins of the people. And then to the right of that squiggly line of the curtain, that's called the holy place. See, I didn't make that up. There's a holy place, and there's a Holy of Holies. Okay? And so you can kind of imagine, right, there's a compass on your bottom right. It's 150 feet long and 75 feet wide. I actually did the measurements of this building. That is exactly the measurements of this building. That is a lie. I don't know how big this building is, but I'm imagining it's kind of like this, which means I would be in the Holy of Holies. But that's what we're looking at, okay? Next picture, very biblical picture. This is the Ark of the Covenant. It's Indiana Jones. Calm down, okay? Super biblical movie, not. But this is a picture of that fancy chest that we're talking about, the Ark of the Covenant. In the Ark of the Covenant are not these weird-looking demons that come out. It is the Ten Commandments, the covenant, the description of God's free people. And if you look carefully in the text, you will see the name Indiana Jones. You won't. Next picture. And this is just kind of a different picture of the tabernacle, and this is specifically where the Holy of Holies is. And you kind of see there's a cutout to kind of show you where it is, but that curtain is the main curtain that separates the Holy of Holies from the holy place. And that guy standing out front, I think he's the bouncer. Just kidding. He looks shady. I don't know what he's doing there. If you see him, walk away. Okay? But kind of sort of that's real because they didn't let Gentiles in, so they had some kind of protection, right? So that kind of gives you a visual of what we're talking about, okay? You can leave that up for like 30 seconds and then take it down. You could keep looking at it. But, okay, so, good sermon, right? Like, what are we talking about here? Okay? Why did I go through that? Why did I give you numbers and dimensions? Why do we talk about cubits? Why are we getting all technical with this stuff? What do we take from this? How does it speak to my soul? How do I apply this to my life? What does it say about God? So let me tell you. Let me put it this way. One of my closest friends, something that you might do with your close friends, you just talk about anything and everything. Because that's just what, close friends do. And one of the things that we talk about a lot of the times is Myers-Briggs stuff. And I act like I know what I'm talking about, but I really don't. But I do know that he's a strong P and I'm a strong J. Myers-Briggs is a personality assessment, and it kind of tells you your type, if I can put it that way. And so he's a strong P and I'm a strong J. And I say that, and he knows that, because this guy always does a great job, always does a great work. In the end, the result is always really good, whether it's school, it's his job, whatever it is. But there's so many times when I catch him procrastinating, and he'll push things to the very end, and he'll stay up all night, he'll pull all-nighters and do all this just procrastination stuff so that he's just kind of working until the end, to the very last minute. And I'm just like, why do you do that? And for him, a lot of times, he does it on purpose because he thrives under that pressure. And I'm like, that's so foreign to me. I don't like working under pressure. I plan ahead, I structure so that when the deadline comes, it's like, I'm chill. Like, I'm almost done with this. I can kind of cruise in to whatever is next. And so it was just like, I don't know why he did that. And when he said, okay, we're talking about Myers-Briggs, and he's like this P, okay, I guess that kind of makes sense. P's kind of like waiting to the last minute. They like doing everything they possibly can, right? J's like things more tangible and concrete. If we're meeting at 5, guess what? That means we're meeting at 5. Okay? But for him, it's like, no, that could mean anything. No, it doesn't, right? And so we kind of conflict with that. And so I'll plan ahead and I'll structure, and he comes to me and he'll knock at me and he'll make fun of me. Oh, you like to structure, you like to plan ahead. As if that's a mean thing to say. I'm like, yeah, thank you. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, it's so foreign to me. That's so weird. But here's the funny thing. We go on these like random road trips together. We'll go to like Palm Springs, we'll go to San Diego, and months ahead, this guy will plan out everything. Restaurants, agenda, how much gas we're going to use, who's in charge of this, who's in charge of that. Forget it, I'm just going to plan it, right? And he just takes care of everything. And me, even as a J, I'm like, that's kind of excessive, bro. We're here to hang, not accomplish a mission, right? And so he's planning out everything, Google spreadsheets and all this stuff. And then it just like kind of dawns on me one day. Why is he such a P with this stuff, and why is he such a J in this way? He becomes very, very structured and planned out and detail-oriented on things that he cares about. And it's not that he doesn't care about job and school. Those are important things to him, but those are day-to-day, week-to-week things he'll know he'll get done. But things that he really treasures, things that he wants to remember for the rest of his life, things he knows he's going to enjoy. He doesn't want to waste a single minute. He plans out, he structures, basically turned into the super J. Here's my point with this. Much of the time, details and plans reveal how much you care about something. Where in the Bible do you see God being this specific? Outside of the Pentateuch, the first five books of the Bible, where do you see God giving specific instructions about worship? You think you find that in the New Testament? No. So what does that tell you then about God and what he's doing with the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle? God is deeply concerned, God deeply cares about the purpose and the intent of the tabernacle. He's not procrastinating, he's not waiting to the last minute, he's not being spontaneous, he's being a super duper J engineer type to get this worship right. And he's communicating that to Moses and his people. So our next question then is, what is the purpose? What is God's intent for the tabernacle? If we can look past the surface level of all these details and all these structures, and if I can be honest, all these boring dimensions and details about the tabernacle, what does it actually show us then about God's intent? And you may notice, you probably won't notice this in your first reading of the text, but in chapters 25 to 31, the phrase, "the Lord said to Moses," comes out 7 times. And I need you to listen when I hear this. In chapters 25 to 31, the phrase, "the Lord said to Moses," comes out 7 times. Okay? And I'm going to quickly go through this in your Bible, so go ahead, kind of fix your eyes on chapter 25. 25:1. It says that. Jump to chapter 30. Chapter 30, verse 11. Chapter 30, verse 11, the Lord said to Moses. Chapter 30, verse 17, the Lord said to Moses. Chapter 30, verse 22, the Lord said to Moses. Chapter 30, verse 34, the Lord said to Moses. Chapter 31, verse 1, the Lord said to Moses. Chapter 31, verse 12, and the Lord said to Moses. 7 times. So now, look up here. Listen carefully to what I say, okay? 7 times it says, the Lord said, okay? The first 6 times, if you want to look back, you don't have to. The first 6 times, it's about the building of the tabernacle. The Lord said to Moses, and he gives these instructions, and then Moses goes, does it. The 7th time, it's not about the tabernacle. Chapter 31, verse 12, and the Lord said to Moses, you are to speak to the people of Israel and say, above all, you shall keep my what? Sabbaths. For this is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I, the Lord, sanctify you. So now, think with me, church. 7 times the Lord says to Moses, that's what Exodus says, 7 times. The first 6 times about the building of the tabernacle, the 7th time is about the Sabbath. What does that remind you of? And this is why we started the invitation to worship this way. It's creation. 7 days. 7 days is creation. The first 6 days, God creates, God builds the world. And the 7th day is the Sabbath, he rests. What does that tell you about God? What does that tell you about what God is communicating about the tabernacle? The tabernacle was a copy of the heavens. The Old Testament will use the word tent to refer to the word tabernacle. It was a big and portable tent that God tells Moses to build. And when you walk into the tent, it wasn't supposed to be some random color that you can find. It was blue. You walked into the tabernacle and you saw blue. Why? Because it reminded you of creation. You walked into the tabernacle and it was creation. And you think, what does this remind me of? Oh yeah, Genesis 1 and 2. When the world was chaotic, it was dark, there was no order, and then God comes into the picture and he creates order. It was a time when there was no such thing as even time or substance, but God comes and he instills order and he instills creation, and at the peak and at the arc, at the apex of that creation was who? It was mankind, Adam and Eve. Oh yeah, I remember. And then it was Eden and it was paradise, and that's where mankind was in perfect harmony with God, when Adam and Eve knew, this is who I am. They don't even know what sin is. They don't know what heartache is. They don't know what suffering is. They don't know what death is. They just know God loves me and I love God. And so what is God doing with the tabernacle? He is restoring God's people. He is bringing back what was once perfect and what was once good. That you might be in the darkness of the wilderness, and you're barely surviving off of manna and quail, but you come into the very presence of God, and you sense God instilling back in you who you once were. And you are restored, you are forgiven, you are given life, you are given hope. And so with that said, of course, then God is going to be precise. Of course, God is going to be meticulous. And of course, God is going to give specific instructions for the tabernacle. And we're going to see years and years, generations to come, that this tabernacle was only a temporary place for what was going to be built as a temple. And to the Israelites, a temple was everything. It wasn't just where they worshiped, it was their worship. And without the temple, they couldn't worship. Without the temple, they couldn't connect with God. Without the temple, they had no priest and no worship and no purpose. But with the temple, they have purpose, they have identity, they have sacrifice, and they have restoration. And if that wasn't enough for us to clearly see the purpose of the tabernacle, we see it in chapter 25, verse 8. Just listen. And let them make me a sanctuary. Why? This is what God says, that I may dwell in their midst. The tabernacle was our identifiable way of saying God is coming to us. Because in the wilderness, you are lost and you are darkness and you are grasping for any sense of the goodness of God. But you go into the tabernacle and you see God came to you. And when we say God is dwelling with us. We're essentially saying it's the same Hebrew word. God is tabernacling. He is tabernacling with us. You've heard me say this a lot, especially when it comes to Old Testament stories, but this isn't just a story of the Israelites. This is our story. What we're reading here is not some random fairy tale about some history lesson of the Israelites. This is a story about us. And the gospel writer John understood that very, very clearly. And he writes in John 2:19, and Jesus says, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. That's what Jesus says. Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. And the Jews thought that he was talking about the physical temple. And maybe I'm being a jerk when they see this, but they're idiots. Of course, Jesus isn't talking about a physical temple. He's talking about his own body, the temple. Because what is the temple? The temple is where we worship. The temple is where we find restoration. The temple is where we find our identity. What is Jesus saying? I am the temple. And in John 1:14, he says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. The Word became flesh and tabernacled among us. The Word became flesh and God came to us. The Word became flesh and God incarnated himself to us. The Word became flesh and God stepped into your dark and depraved and crappy and sinful and hurt-filled, death-filled, disease-filled world, the flesh. He stepped into your trenches of life. He came to us. He came to you. Not a far distant God, but Jesus, God in flesh. What this is saying about God, what the tabernacle says about God, listen to me, God wants a relationship with his people. All that to say, just a simple yet profound message. God wants a relationship with his people. Isn't that what Exodus is about? You think God just delivered his people just to throw them into the wilderness for no reason? But they're in the wilderness, why? So that we can finally see we need our God. And God doesn't just want us to give him service. He's giving these laws and these instructions for us, but he wants a relationship. And that really pushes us to think about how theologically, where the rubber meets the road, and we start asking ourselves questions, well then, do we tabernacle with Jesus? Do we dwell with Jesus? Do we pursue Jesus? If God is giving us everything we need to understand, that he is coming to us to dwell with us and to tabernacle with us, is there a response? Is there life, and is there any kind of signal that we throw back to God and say, yes, I hear you, and now I'm going to do my part to pursue you? Anyone here that's seen the movie Castaway? Tom Hanks? Deserted Island? Okay, well, if you haven't, I don't know, go watch it. But Castaway is this crazy movie. Tom Hanks plays this guy named Chuck. He's on a plane and he crashes and he goes on an island. Not much to spoil. That's really the story. And basically survives. And it's really, really well-made movie, even though it's old. And his name, the guy Chuck, he just has to really, he's on a deserted island by himself. Okay, and it's not a comedy, by the way. It's really intense. And he's trying to survive off of this island. And I don't know about you, but I'm watching this movie. I'm thinking about, I'm just really connected emotionally. Like, wow, this is a guy struggling to survive, and he has to strip away all the kind of luxuries and amenities of life, and he has to find his core basic needs of survival. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Like your most basic, fundamental needs to survive. Okay? So think about that. What comes before shelter? What comes before community and relationships, even though we stress that a lot here? What comes before even food? Water. And it's amazing because he's on a deserted island. He can't find a source of fresh water. And so the next thing he does is he's sitting there and a coconut falls on his head and he realizes there's water in a coconut. And it's crazy. He's trying to rip open this coconut, and coconuts are like just layers and layers of packing. It's like a lot of us in small groups. Oh, that's deep, huh? Right? And it's like layers and layers of coconut. You got to pierce that surface in order to get to the good stuff. And he finally gets it and he dying of thirst, and there's like drips of coconut water that falls out, and now he discovers this is what I have to survive off of. And so he has to create a system of opening up these coconut waters, or else he's going to die. And that's the first thing he turns to. Now, I don't want to spoil the movie, but let me kind of say it this way. What if one day he runs out of coconut water, he runs out of any kind of source of hydration and water, and he's about to die? It's just days before he dies, and he knows it. And all of a sudden, a bunch of sailors come, they bump into the island, and they say, hey, we're here to rescue you. And the sailors go to Chuck and they say, hey man, here's a jacket. And he goes, I don't need a jacket, I need water. Oh, okay, great, I got you, bro. Hey, here's a platter of steak and fries. That's great, I'll get to that, but water, I need water. Oh, okay, great. I got a new pair of kicks for you. Super comfortable, right? Here, it's a gift for you. Thank you, but water. I need water. Where I'm going with this is that I think that the tabernacle shows us that God knows us because he created us, and he's creating this tabernacle for us because he knows our greatest need, our greatest and most fundamental and basic need. And God establishes that, but our response so many times is we go for everything about Jesus, but we don't go after Jesus. We pursue all these great things that Jesus gives, but we don't go after Jesus, our most basic and fundamental need. We go after everything but Jesus himself. And it's like Chuck is saying, hey, give me the shoes. Hey, give me the jacket. Hey, give me the food. But he's dying of thirst. And so where we are in our faith is, I think, if I could be honest, I think where the rubber meets the road for us is that as a people, I think we're getting really good at church. I think if you're a covenant member here, the membership thing is going well for you. And I think if someone from the outskirts, like an outsider come in and were to view us, or like maybe a KM member would just kind of peek in and kind of see what we're doing, they might kind of see, oh, like people are coming out and they're consistent and they're serving, and they're growing, and maybe they're even giving financial offering, doing all these things. Oh, they're growing. EM is doing well. Pastor Howard must be doing a great job. But then 6 days out of the week, what they don't see is that there's no personal pursuit of Jesus. What they don't see is what we think about, what we do in our personal time or with our personal resources. They don't see kind of the affections of the heart, and they don't see the lacking or the pursuit of Jesus. And you guys, I'm not talking about reading the Bible and praying. Those are hugely important things. But what I'm talking about is there an active and dynamic relation between you and Jesus? Do you think that Jesus wants your duties? Do you think that God went to Moses and gave all these specific dimensions of the tabernacle because God needed Moses? Come on. Do you think that you serving somehow gives back to God, like God is like, oh, I really needed that. Thank you. I appreciate that. But that it's us that needs God. You see, we can get better at church. Now listen to me. We can get better at church, and we can start adding some serious numbers to this ministry. We can blow this ministry up, but if we're not a people who love Jesus behind the scenes, we're headed straight into the wilderness. We're headed straight to the darkness. Like, who cares about blowing up a ministry if the members aren't pursuing Jesus? That's where we're completely missing the point of church. It's pursuing after all the things that God provides, but it's not going after God himself. But that serving, financial giving, hanging out, and pursuing community, if they're all these wonderful byproducts of our personal pursuits of Jesus, what a beautiful gospel-centered community that is. And I'm not just even talking about our individual lives. I mean, we can start even thinking about our context corporately. Like, do you know why we gather every Sunday? Don't clock out on me, because then you'll get the wrong picture, but do you know why we gather every Sunday? You know? Like, I was sharing this with the people in the Sunday service team and praise team and everything before service today, and I kind of posed them that question, like, why do we meet every Sunday? What if I said, hey, we're going to take about 2 months off of Sunday, right? You're all going to be, what is that? That's so weird. But we don't think about that because we just do it, right? And in our Sunday gatherings, why is there preaching every Sunday? And why is there worship every Sunday? And why is there a sense of routine and systematic approach that we do these things every Sunday? And no one ever asks me, why do we do this? And why can't we skip this today? No one ever says that. We just do it. And for some of us, that routine approach really turns us off. We like spontaneity, right? We like to do things. But why do we do those fundamental things every Sunday? Do you think God needs our worship? Do you think God, in his perfect relationship of the Trinity, all of a sudden says, hey, we need you to be the fourth member of the Godhead? No, we're third-wheeling it, fourth-wheeling it, right, if you want to be all technical about the Trinity. We're third-wheeling with God and the Trinity, God in the Trinity, and we're saying, hey, we're here to bless you guys. No, we need the Sunday worship. We need the gathering here. We need the Sabbath to rest and find restoration and tabernacle with God. And so maybe a better question to ask is not just how we pursue, but what's stopping us from pursuing Jesus as life stream? What is stopping us in our culture when you look at what causes us to get up Sunday morning and what causes us to get out of bed and do what we do? And you look at the innate values, what is stopping us from pursuing Jesus as a corporate community? I think pride is a really dangerous thing. And I think pride is something that robs us. It robs us of resting and celebrating and pursuing Jesus together. And for some reason, we find it okay to celebrate sports teams and Lakers and Lonzo Ball. We find it okay to celebrate when things go our way on random TV shows that we watch. And we can gather with people, and we can celebrate, and we can make huge events out of it, and we can holler at the TV even though it's dead. But we come in here and we think, oh, I'm too conservative to worship that way. I'm too liberal to worship that way. But it's pride that's robbing you from engaging with Jesus and receiving his goodness. And everything around Jesus becomes your pursuit, but not Jesus. Don't let pride rob you of your worship. Seriously. Who cares if people judge you? Who cares if people think that you're not really worshiping? Is that really important in your relationship and pursuit of Jesus? I mean, you have to think about that and measure some values in your life. That I'm not going to engage with Jesus, tabernacle with Jesus, and worship here with the Sunday gathering because I feel like he might judge me. You see, because what happens 6 days out of the week? 6 days out of the week, we go and we feed off of trash. We give ourselves to idol. And we don't show up on Sundays. We'd like to, but we don't show up on Sundays all put together, right, with a figurative suit on. We show up holy and super just righteous. We don't show up that way, let's be honest. We show up jacked up, we show up prideful, we show up exhausted, we show up just angry and pissed off and frustrated, right? And we mask it with smiles. But if we can just get over that and stop acting like we're all put together, look at one another and see in each other's eyes the exhaustion, see each other the ugliness, and see each other the pride, and say, man, we need Jesus today more than ever. Let's pursue Jesus together, Livestream. Forget this stupid pride and just go after Jesus. And when that doesn't work, find grace and then pursue Jesus. And find grace upon grace upon grace. And be restored and be restored and be restored. Ditch the pride, ditch the laziness. Go after Jesus because that is our most fundamental need, and that is what the tabernacle shows us. And that is God's sovereign story working in the events of his people. Let's pray.